UK, Australia, and Canada recognize a Palestinian state, prompting anger from Israel. This is from the AP. The UK, Australia, and Canada formally recognized a Palestinian state on Sunday, prompting an angry response from Israel, which ruled out the prospect. The coordinated initiative from the three Commonwealth nations and longtime allies reflects growing outrage at Israel's conduct of the war in Gaza and the steps taken by the Israeli government to thwart efforts to create a Palestinian state, including by continued expansion of settlements in the West Bank. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer, who has faced public pressure to take a harder line on Israel within his own governing Labour Party over the deteriorating situation in Gaza, said the UK's move is intended to revive the hope of peace for Palestinians and Israelis. He insisted it wasn't a reward for Hamas, which was, I don't know why we even have to say that anymore, but yeah, whatever, which was behind the attack on October 7th, 2023, in which militants killed some 1,200 people and abducted 251 others. 2023, 2 years. Today, to revive the hope of peace and a two-state solution, I state clearly as Prime Minister of this great country that the United Kingdom formally recognizes the state of Palestine. That's awesome. Starmer said in a video message, "We recognized the state of Israel more than 75 years ago as a homeland for the Jewish people. Today we join over 150 countries who recognize a Palestinian state also." Now this was, should be stated though, that this was like status quo years ago. I'm glad we're back, but it is what it is. The moves by the three countries prompted, I shouldn't say status quo, they hadn't recognized a Palestinian state, they just pushed for a two-state solution, which is implied. Anyway, the moves by the three countries prompted Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to say that the establishment of a Palestinian state, quote, will not happen, while Hamas urged the international community to isolate Israel. Later on Sunday, Portugal said it was recognizing a Palestinian state as well. The British announcement was widely anticipated after Starmer said in July that the UK would recognize a Palestinian state unless Israel agreed to a ceasefire in Gaza, allowed the United Nations to bring in aid, and took steps towards long-term peace. More countries are expected to join the list recognizing a Palestinian state at the UN General Assembly this week, including France, which, like the UK, is one of the 5 permanent members of the Security Council. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu blasted the three countries for proffering a prize to Hamas, so what he calls a, quote, prize to Hamas. "It will not happen," he said. "A Palestinian state will not be established west of the Jordan River." Netanyahu, who is set to give a speech to the General Assembly on Friday before heading to see U.S. President Donald Trump at the White House, said he would announce Israel's response after the trip. Netanyahu was threatened to take unilateral steps, including the possibility of annexing parts of the West Bank in response to world leaders' recognition of a Palestinian state. Such a move would clear the way for Israel to deepen its control over the territory and escalate tensions with the international community. Hamas hailed the decision, calling it the, quote, rightful outcome of our people's struggle, steadfastness, and sacrifices on the path to liberation and return. Of course they're going to say that. We still don't like them, but of course they're going to say that. The Islamic militant group, which has sworn to Israel's destruction, called on the world to isolate Israel. And of course we don't like them, but it's also Netanyahu who placed them there. And it's just a big show. We all know that by now. But this is good news that countries are jumping on board. Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas, whose Palestinian Authority exercises limited autonomy in towns and cities in the West Bank, said the UK announcement is an important step towards achieving a just and lasting peace in the region based on the two-state solution, the official Palestinian news agency Wafa said. The UK and France have had a historic role in the politics of the Middle East over the past 100 years, having carved up the region following the defeat of the Ottoman Empire in World War I. As part of that carve-up, the UK became the governing power of what was then Palestine. It was also the author of the 1917 Balfour Declaration, which backed the establishment of a, quote, national home for the Jewish people. However, the second part of the declaration has been largely neglected over the decades. It noted that nothing shall be done, which may prejudice the civil and religious rights of the Palestinian people. It's significant for France and the UK to recognize Palestine because of the legacy of the two countries' involvement in the Middle East. This is from a senior research fellow for Middle Eastern security at London-based Royal United Services Institute. But without the United States coming on board with the idea of a Palestine, I think very little will change on the ground. Zamlat, the Palestinian head of mission in the UK, told the BBC that recognition would right a colonial era wrong. The issue today is ending the denial of our existence that started 108 years ago in 1917, he said. And I think today the British people should celebrate a day when history is being corrected. That they should. The UK has for decades supported an independent Palestinian state alongside Israel, but insisted recognition must come as part of a peace plan to achieve a two-state solution. However, the government has become increasingly worried that such a solution becoming all but impossible. During the past 2 years, Israel's assault on Gaza has displaced most of its population, killed more than 65,000 people, and caused a catastrophic humanitarian crisis, including a famine in Gaza City. Now, obviously, we know that $65,000 is an underestimate. That number is most likely closer to 500,000. Last week, independent experts commissioned by the UN's Human Rights Council concluded that Israel is committing genocide in Gaza, a charge that Israel rejected as distorted and false. And just jumping in, this is from the AP, by the way. Also vexing for the UK is that Israel's government has been aggressively expanding settlements in the West Bank, land that Palestinians want for their future state. Much of the world regards Israel's occupation of the West Bank, which is ostensibly run by the Palestinian Authority, as illegal. This move has symbolic and historic weight, makes clear the UK's concerns about the survival of a two-state solution, and is intended to keep that goal relevant and alive. Awesome. Some problematic things happen in the UK, just like there is here, but good news is good news. Glad to see them recognized. I wish we were there too, but we are far from it. Feel free to come in and chat. As usual, I kind of like do my research with you guys, read through some of these articles, and but I'm happy to pause for a chat or try to answer questions in the comments. So, Jenna, just to explain that, so that I don't know if you remember the whole Gingers of the New Black thing, but it was a pretty amazing moment, and a lot of us communicated back and forth, and we've been talking ever since. And so, yeah, we're we're tight. So that's why he calls me that. FYI. All right, let's see what else is going on here. Israel strike kills more than 40 people in Gaza. Again, wonderful. This Charlie Kirk funeral, by the way, I don't even really want to delve into it because it's just so sickening. Even if you love Charlie Kirk, like how are you not frustrated by what they're doing here? That they're turning his death into some sort of political moment, like they wanted this to capitalize on from the very beginning. So even if you're a Kirk supporter, I don't know how you're good with this. It doesn't make any sense. It's gross. To have Stephen Miller speaking too. I quite honestly, I'm not even, well, I shouldn't say that. He probably would have been great with it. If you haven't gone down the Erica Kirk rabbit hole, I am not going to go down that hole, by the way, because it's very conspiratorial and I don't know what's real. But there's some wild stuff there, so take a look. See, DOJ is ramping up. Trump ramps up retribution campaign with push for Bondi to pursue cases against his foes. This is also from the AP, and this is by Meg Kennard. These journalists, there's still some journalists out there that do really amazing work, and one of the reasons I want to read through all this stuff is because I know most people don't. Obviously, what we're getting on TikTok is kind of these quick moments. But it's good to read they're incredible writers, they're brave, they're getting us this information. So with these good journalists, it's important to go and support their work. AP I've stuck with. They've been great through all this. 8 months into his second term, President Donald Trump's long-standing pledge to take on those he perceives as political enemies has prompted debates over free speech, media censorship, and political prosecutions. From late-night comedian Jimmy Kimmel's suspension to Pentagon restrictions on reporters and an apparent public appeal to Attorney General Pam Bondi to pursue legal cases against his adversaries. Trump has escalated moves to consolidate power in his second administration and root out those who have spoken out against him. That's saying the least. In a post on social media this weekend addressed to Bondi, Trump says, "Nothing is being done." Imagine addressing your DOJ like this. Unbelievable. "Nothing is being done on investigations into some of his foes. We can't delay any longer. It's killing our reputation and credibility," he said, noting that he was impeached and criminally charged. "Justice must be served now." How do these people not know that he's going to throw you under the bus at some point? Criticizing investigations into Trump's dealings under Democratic President Joe Biden's Justice Department, Senator Rand Paul said Sunday that it is not right for the Trump administration to do the same thing. Okay, cool. Rand Paul pops his head out every now and again and supports things. Great. Trump has ratcheted up his discussion of pursuing legal cases against some of his political opponents, part of a vow for retribution that has been a theme of his return to the White House. He publicly praised Bondi this weekend to move forward with such investigations. Trump posted somewhat of an open letter on social media Saturday to his top prosecutor to advance such inquiries, including a mortgage fraud probe into New York Attorney General Letitia James and a possible threat case against former FBI Director James Comey. He posted that he had reviewed over 30 statements and posts that he characterized as criticizing his administration for a lack of action on investigations. "We have to act fast, one way or another," Trump told reporters later that night at the White House. "They're guilty. They're not guilty. We have to act fast. If they're not guilty, that's fine. If they're guilty, if they should be charged, they should be charged, and we have to do it now." That's not a Trump voice. I don't know what that was. Sorry. Trump later wrote in a follow-up post that Bondi was doing a great job. Paul, a frequent Trump foil from the right, was asked during an interview on NBC's Meet the Press about the propriety of the president directing his attorney general to investigate political opponents. The director decried lawfare in all forms. Senator Chris Murphy, love that guy, said it was unconstitutional and deeply immoral for the president to jail or to silence his political enemies. He warned it could set a worrisome precedent for both parties. One thing about Chris Murphy, though, that I've heard that there was a unanimous vote in the Senate on this Charlie Kirk thing. I don't know if he was included in that or if he abstained. Maybe if somebody knows. Anyway, it will come back and boomerang on conservatives and Republicans at some point if this becomes the norm. The Senate Democratic leader, Chuck Schumer of New York, said on CNN's State of the Union that Trump is turning the Justice Department into an instrument that goes after his enemies, whether they're guilty or not. Most of them are not guilty at all, and that helps his friends. This is the path to a dictatorship. That's what dictatorships do. Got a message for you, Chuck. We're already there. The Justice Department did not respond Sunday, of course. Here it comes, guys. They're coming for all of us, one time or another. That's why we got to stick together. I don't care if it's John Bolton, trans people, you name it. Anybody Trump's targeting, we get behind. That's the way this works. Otherwise, we're all toast. So, all right, let's see what else we got out there. Again, feel free to request if you want to come in. Please follow me on YT. And I got some books here, some pretty good books to purchase if you don't mind. You can also request to come on. I do give priorities to subscriptions and to gifts, but for the most part, you're welcome to come on and chat, debate, whatever you want. And that's about it. Let's see. Trump officials reportedly set to tie Tylenol to autism risk. Cool. More pseudoscience, I'm sure. This, I'm reading this in The Guardian, but the report's actually from the Washington Post. They say the announcement's imminent despite guidelines showing drug known as, how do you pronounce this? I'm not a medical person. Paracetamol elsewhere is safe for pregnant women to take. Trump administration is on Monday expected to tie pregnant women's use of the popular medicine Tylenol, known as, I'm not even going to try that again, to a risk of autism, contrary to medical guidelines, the Washington Post has reported. Trump officials are also expected to announce an effort to explore how the drug leucovorin could purportedly and potentially treat autism, according to the Post report published Sunday, which cited 4 sources with knowledge of the plans who spoke on the condition of anonymity because the announcement had not been made. Medical guidelines say it is safe for pregnant women to take Tylenol, the over-the-counter pain medication whose active ingredient is known as acetaminophen. I can't pronounce anything tonight. Sorry, guys. In the U.S. and elsewhere, elsewhere in the world. Trump teased the announcement during the memorial for conservative activist Charlie Kirk on Sunday. He's talking about this during the memorial service. He's talking about Tylenol and autism at Kirk's memorial service. Just thought you should know. I think we found an answer to autism. On Saturday, the president said the planned announcement would be one of the most important things that we do. He's done it, guys. Trump has cured autism. Early in September, the Wall Street Journal reported that Trump's Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. planned to announce that use of Tylenol by pregnant women was potentially linked to autism spectrum disorder, which is defined as a neurodevelopmental condition marked by social as well as communication difficulties and behaviors that are repetitive. As the Post reported, some medical trials involving administering this drug to children with autism have shown what some scientists describe as remarkable improvements in their ability to speak and understand others, though those trials are considered early. So I don't know anything about this new drug, but there's no tie between Tylenol and autism. Correct me if I'm wrong if you're a medical professional. Doesn't sound like there is. All right. This is a wild time, isn't it, guys? Let's see what we got here. No pregnant women. Yeah. Autism. I'm not even convinced that at this point that autism's a disorder. Whatever disorder is, and I'm starting to think we just define disorders as whatever doesn't allow you to function in this rigid society. And maybe autism, these people would have thrived if they, I don't know, had to build a shelter for the village and then they could rest for a week, right? I mean, it's just, it's not the world for them, unfortunately. And I actually have some spectrum issues myself, so I sympathize. I just don't think, I'm not severe, but I don't think the world was built for us, unfortunately. But man, do we have superpowers if they let us. Well, thank you, Nikki. I appreciate it. You are also an amazing, incredible human being. I am also a Christ follower. I don't like to throw that around. It's not me to throw that around as much, but I do appreciate it. Yeah, brain type. We just all have different brain types, right? I mean, imagine if these people were put in a position where they could actually thrive. For sure. I saw that. He said Charlie wouldn't have hated his opponent, but I hate my opponent. That's insanity. If there's any Charlie Kirk fans out there, let me know what you thought of today's memorial service. Regardless of who Charlie Kirk was, you've got to admit that was ridiculous. Exactly. Christ follower does not equal Christian nationalist. I mean, you could define it as simply as I follow the philosophy of the great philosopher Jesus Christ, right? It's as simple as that. The principles of self-sacrifice, loving your enemy, that's why I follow. But you believe whatever you want to believe. I'm not a proselytizer, so. Absolutely. I think we all can agree that love is this force that we need more of. Well, I shouldn't say we all should agree, but most of us agree on that. I'm not going to be on too long tonight, but give it a little longer. All right, let's see what else is going on. I posted a post, by the way, on Russell Wilson. If you're a Giants fan out there, I'm sorry. this guy is completely lost. Exactly. We were the ones that recognized. That's why I recognized what was coming when Trump won the nomination in 2016. I was still a registered Republican at that point, and saw it right away and left. Maybe I should have even left earlier. Arguably, but that being said, I think we were the first to recognize what was going on for sure. And I think honestly, a lot of ex-evangelicals and ex-conservatives fall into that category. So I do think that plays into it, right? They saw what was going on in their own church or their own family or whatever it was. Unfortunately, it wasn't enough, but maybe eventually. Yeah, apparently Erica Kirk, I don't want to delve in this too much because I got all the research to do here, but apparently she used to be one of Trump's models, and there may or may not be some ties to Jeffrey Epstein. Just look into it. It's weird. It's hard not to be conspiratorial these days. It really is. Nobody's giving us any truth at all from any centralized authority, and so we're just left on our own trying to follow good journalists and academics and getting it wherever we can. But not everybody has the time for that. I see why these things fly around. It's crazy. Appreciate the follows, guys. I don't know if anybody saw this Tom Homan news too here. Let me see if I can pull this up. This is pretty wild. Give me 1 second. This is from MSNBC. They were the ones that broke the story. Tom Homan was investigated for accepting $50,000 from undercover FBI agents. Trump's DOJ shut it down in his first term. The FBI and justice officials closed the investigation, which a Justice Department appointee had called a, quote, deep state probe in early 2025. In an undercover operation last year, the reporters here are Carol Lenig and Ken Delanian, I think is how you pronounce them. This is from MSNBC. In an undercover operation last year, the FBI recorded Tom Homan, now the White House border czar, accepting $50,000 in cash after indicating he would help the agents, who were posing as business executives, win government contracts in a second Trump administration, according to multiple people familiar with the probe and internal documents reviewed by MSNBC. Man, this would be like the story at any other time. The FBI and the Justice Department planned to wait to see whether Homan would deliver on his alleged promise once he became the nation's top immigration official. But the case indefinitely stalled soon after Donald Trump became president again in January, according to 6 sources familiar with the matter. In recent weeks, Trump appointees officially closed the investigation after FBI Director Kash Patel requested a status update on the case, 2 of the people said. It's unclear what reasons FBI and Justice Department officials gave for shutting down the investigation, but the Trump Justice Department appointee called the case a, quote, deep state probe in early 2025, and no further investigative steps were taken, the sources say. The federal investigation was launched in western Texas in the summer of 2024 after a subject in a separate investigation claimed Homan was soliciting payments in exchange for awarding contracts should Trump win the presidential election, according to an internal Justice Department summary of the probe reviewed by MSNBC and people familiar with the case. The U.S. Attorney's Office in the Western District of Texas, working with the FBI, asked the Justice Department's Public Integrity Section to join its ongoing probe. into the border czar and former acting director of Immigration and Customs Enforcement Tom Homan, and others based on evidence of payment from FBI undercover agents in exchange for facilitating future contracts related to border enforcement. Homan, who served as acting director of Immigration and Customs Enforcement early in Trump's first term, openly claimed during the 2024 campaign that he would play a prominent role in carrying out Trump's promised mass deportations. Asked for comment about MSNBC's exclusive reporting, the White House, the Justice Department, and the FBI dismissed the investigation as politically motivated and baseless, of course. In a statement provided to MSNBC, FBI Director Kash Patel and Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche said, "This matter originated under the previous administration and was subjected to a full review by FBI agents and Justice Department prosecutors." Sure. They found no credible evidence of any criminal wrongdoing. The Justice Department's resources must remain focused on real threats to the American people, not baseless investigations. As a result, the investigation has been closed. White House Deputy Press Secretary Abigail Jackson slammed the probe as a blatantly political investigation which found no evidence of illegal activity, and yet another example of how the Biden Department of Justice was using its resources to target President Trump's allies rather than investigate real criminals and the millions of illegal aliens who flooded the country. In their words, not mine. Tom Homan has not been involved with any contract award decisions. He is a career law enforcement officer and lifelong public service who is doing a phenomenal job on behalf of President Trump and the country, she added on behalf of Homan, a senior White House employee. Homan did not reply for requests for comment. Undercover FBI agents posing as contractors communicated them and met several times last summer with a business colleague who introduced them to Homan and with Homan himself, who indicated he would facilitate securing contracts for them in exchange for money once he was in office, according to documents and the people familiar with the case. On September 20th, 2024, with hidden cameras recording the scene at a meeting spot in Texas, Homan accepted $50,000 in bills, according to an internal summary of the case and sources. FBI agents and Justice Department prosecutors took no further investigative steps in the final months of 2024, the people said, and expected to keep monitoring Homan to determine if he landed an official role and would make good on steering contracts in a future Trump administration. When special agents in Texas began probing the subject's claim that Homan was soliciting bribes, the White House border czar, 63, was president and owner of a private consulting business that said it could help companies in the border security industry win government contracts. Homan often accompanied Trump on the campaign trail in 2023 and 2024, and for months before the presidential election publicly touted that he expected to oversee implementation of Trump's immigration policies. Trump comes back in January. I'll be on his heels coming back, and I will run the biggest deportation operation in the country's ever seen, Homan said at the National Conservatism Conference in July of 2024. Several FBI and Justice Department's officials believed that they had a strong criminal case against Homan for conspiracy to commit bribery based on recording him accepting cash and his apparent, well, they have a recording, wow, and his apparent promise to assist with contracts, according to 4 people familiar with the probe. God, I hope that audio comes out. Homan could have been charged with a crime then, legal experts say, but his case was unusual. He was not a public official, and Trump was not president at the time. He accepted money in the FBI's undercover sting, so his actions didn't clearly fit under a standard bribery charge. Top officials privately debated, so they were just waiting for him to come back. Top officials privately debated the possible charges given Homan's status at the time. People familiar with the case said, but several concluded it would be better for the investigation to continue to monitor his actions once he was back in public office. According to a document reviewed by MSNBC, justice officials were eyeing 4 potential criminal charges in his case: conspiracy, bribery, and 2 kinds of fraud. MSNBC asked legal experts about the hypothetical situation similar to the Homan probe, a hypothetical situation. They said a person who promises to influence federal contracts when they become a public official can't be charged under the federal bribery statutes until they are named or appointed to such a post. If the person did get the administration job and then reaffirmed his promise and communicated in some way about his plan to deliver on his agreement, investigators could make a strong bribery case. Well, they can't now. They're throwing it out. It is still a crime, however, for anyone to seek money to improperly influence federal contracts. There you go, the legal expert said. Whether they are a public official or not, and whether they even delivered on their promise or not. People in this category would be charged with conspiracy or fraud, they said. And who knows, I mean, how is anybody going to press them on this, right? It would maybe have to happen on a state level, but I don't know how that would work. If someone who is not yet a public official but expects to be takes bribes in exchange for agreeing to take official acts after they are appointed, they can't be charged with bribery, says Randall Eliason, a former chief of public corruption prosecutions in the U.S. Attorney's Office in D.C. and former white-collar law professor. That was my favorite law school course, by the way. That was a great course. But they can be charged with conspiracy to commit bribery. In a conspiracy charge, the crime is the agreement to commit a criminal act in the future. On November 11, 2024, President Trump announced he would make Homan his border czar, a White House advisor role, which, unlike the job of Director of Immigration and Customs Enforcement, did not require Senate confirmation or an extensive FBI background check. Convenient. Several FBI and Justice Department officials believed Homan's acceptance of the cash provided strong evidence that they should continue to pursue after Homan took public office. The Public Integrity Section, a squad of seasoned public corruption prosecutors, typically assigned to sensitive cases involving elected and other high-profile figures, agreed to join the case in late November 2024, according to documents reviewed by MSNBC. Shortly after Trump's inauguration, however, in either late January or February 2025, former acting Deputy Attorney General Emil Bove was briefed on the case and told Justice Department officials he did not support the investigation, according to people familiar with the case. Around the same time, the Public Integrity Section was battling with Bove over his demand that they dismiss a bribery case against New York Mayor Eric Adams. The section supervisors, who would resign one by one in February rather than agree to dismiss the Adams case, had assigned a top supervisor to help oversee the Homan case with federal prosecutors in the Western District of Texas, where the investigation began, two people said. This is wildly corrupt. Unbelievable. Not that we're surprised, of course, but any other time, my God. Homan had spent 3 decades in federal border protection and immigration enforcement. A former police officer from upstate New York, Homan had started work as a Border Patrol agent in the 1980s and later promoted to several supervisory roles. In 2013, President Barack Obama elevated Homan to serve as head of Immigrations and Customs Enforcement's deportation branch. Not great, but I'm sure he didn't know him as well then. When Trump was first elected president in 2017, he appointed Homan as acting head of ICE. In that role, Homan pushed the controversial zero-tolerance policy for immigrants seeking to cross the border, resulting in the separation of thousands of migrant children from their parents and family members. He just loves separating kids from their parents, doesn't he? Homan's nomination to become the permanent ICE director stalled in the Senate amid widespread criticism over the administration's family separation policies and Senate Democrats' opposition to his confirmation. Well, he doesn't have to worry about that now. After his lengthy career in government service, Homan announced in April 2018 he would retire. Homan then launched his consulting firm, Homeland Strategic Consulting, which is sadly very normal for these guys to do when they retire. Its website boasted of its work with the with the Departments of Homeland Security, Defense, Justice, and others. We have a proven track record of opening doors and bringing successful relationships to our clients, resulting in tens of millions of dollars of federal contracts to private companies. During the Biden administration, as Trump prepared to run again for president, Homan remained close to Trump and his advisors, working as a Fox News contributor and with the Heritage Foundation, as well as contributing to the wonderful Project 2025. When Homan became Trump's top border official in 2025, his consulting work and financial ties to border security and immigration-related contractors spurred questions from Democrats in Congress about his potential conflicts of interest. Many expected Homan, a trusted Trump ally, to serve if Trump were reelected in 2024. In a December 2023 interview on the Slain Conservative Activists podcast, The Charlie Kirk Show, Homan promised he'd be pushing a robust removal of immigrants when Trump was reelected. We're going to have the biggest deportation operation this country has ever seen, Homan told Benny Johnson, a right-wing commentator and host on the show, and I'm not going to apologize for it. So this guy, corrupt as the rest of this administration, gets $50,000 for promising contracts with Trump, federal contracts with Trump. One of the most corrupt things you can possibly do in government. And this guy has the gall to then go and pull parents from their children, sending them to concentration camps, third countries, horrible conditions, and say that they're lawbreakers, say that they're illegal. This is just sickening, absolutely sickening. Again, we knew stuff like this was happening, but when we hear it, we still got to talk about it, and it's still gross. As Borders Are, you are uniquely positioned to help your former business client reap a huge windfall from the Trump administration's spending on immigration enforcement. Remember, too, the organization that submitted replied to a request for proposal, Blackwater, right? These guys were the ones that said that they could do this, and I'm sure there are a ton of contractors involved in this. So it's not just, new ICE agents getting $50,000 and having good, stable jobs. There is money going around to conservatives, taxpayer money going around to conservatives all over the place. So, God, we need good journalists, and I'm glad we have one here. Anyway. Well, with that, guys, I'm going to call it quits. I appreciate it, but I will be back again tomorrow. Guys, all have a wonderful night.